Hey guys, we're in chapter 3 titled The Adjudication Process. The adjudication process is the entire timeline from when a criminal complaint is filed by the prosecution. A complaint is simply the filing of charges by the prosecutor who has reviewed the information of the arresting agency. The prosecutor looks for the requirements that she feels is necessary to fulfill probable cause. What is probable cause? Beginning with a police officer, it's a requirement that must be met. The officer should have the evidence in front of him or her that would make a reasonable person believe a crime has been committed or is about to be committed. There are several variables that an officer is taught during training here. You have to be careful, um, as any arrest without a probable cause is dismissed and could even result in a violation of someone's constitutional rights. So what if, let's say, and I want everyone to, and if you're a police officer, have been a police officer before, you understand this, because this is drilled into you with every training that you receive. What if you, let's use an example of stopping a car. You stop a car and that stop is deemed unlawful. There was really no reason for stopping a car, and you find drugs in that car. The drugs that you found is no good. Anything, any, even any legal arrest that comes from an illegal stop is no good. It's called fruit of the poisonous tree. So anything that a prosecutor, and that's one thing that a prosecutor would definitely look at, is probable cause for the original stop or a search even. The prosecutor will look at the strength of the case when he gets the case. Did the police do their job? What crime was committed? And that seems simple, but there's different charges for different crimes, and there's different things to look at the elements of each crime to see what they need to be charged with. Were the suspect's constitutional rights violated? How many witnesses are there, and were the witnesses credible? Those are a few things that the prosecutor looks for when he gets the complaint. And once the charges are filed, there'll be an arraignment. The arraignment simply handles some of the basic constitutional privileges, like informing the defendant why he's locked up and ensuring other representation is checked off. The defendant will also enter a plea during the arraignment. The next thing would be the preliminary hearing. It's simply a hearing to ensure that there is probable cause to move forward in the trial process. So not only the prosecutor looks and to see if there's probable cause, the judge here is going to look to see if everyone has done their job and there is probable cause to move on. So after this, there's a lot to the adjudication process before an actual trial occurs. There's suppression hearings. That's simply a hearing to allow a judge to decide if evidence can be used at a trial. So has that evidence, things that they'll look at, has that evidence been collected properly, maintained properly? Have the rules of evidence been followed without any doubt of violating any rights? An example would be drugs found in the defendant's pocket. Uh, the defense may say that the police didn't have probable cause to stop the defendant, therefore the drugs that were found during the search was illegal and it can't move forward. So those would be the things that would be tried to be suppressed during a suppression hearing. There's also discovery. The idea behind discovery is that each side should have ample warning of what the other side will present at trial. This step of the process is sometimes manipulated by attorneys on both sides, but for justice to be served correctly, they should know what is being presented so they can answer and defend the accusation. This also speeds the trial up, because if during the trial the opposing attorney is just hearing something, they're gonna stop and they're gonna want to look at it. So discovery is another process, or another part of pre-trial things that happen. Plea bargaining, I know most of you have heard of plea bargaining. Plea bargaining is simply if a defendant gets to a point where he or she feels like they're going to be found guilty, or uh, their attorney says, there's a big possibility that you're going to be found guilty, and if you get found guilty at trial, the possibility of getting 20 years exists. Or the prosecutor could offer, hey, if we don't go to trial, we'll give you 5 years, and 5 years of probation after that. So a defendant will take that. One problem you see with this is a lot of times, if the possibility of being convicted uh, is there, a lot of times an innocent defendant will take that to keep from facing the possibility of going to jail for a long time. So plea bargaining is good and bad. One of the main reasons for plea bargaining is to speed up the the dockets and things that are going on. There's so many trials that allows the justice to be served quicker. And then there's the trial. And for the trial, you've got jury selection also. And it's almost become a science. I think there's even shows about it now that's on television just about jury selection. The Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees the right to trial by jury in criminal cases where the defendant could face more than 6 months in jail. So it's a big deal. I want to touch also a little bit about a grand jury. You don't hear much about grand juries, but in a lot of white collar cases, the prosecutor will call for a grand jury to decide whether or not the case should proceed or indict the defendant. The only job of a grand jury is to vote to indict or not indict. That's it. There's no finding of innocence or guilt. So the grand jury, in essence, is doing the prosecutor's job. Typically, when a prosecutor looks at a case, he decides whether the case should move to the court system. Here, the prosecutor decides that a grand jury will decide. And again, remember that the only job of the grand jury is to indict or not to indict. Question, and there, all of this is packed in one chapter, and the more we go into to this course, you'll hear more about it. But I just want to touch on a little bit of the things that occurred during trial, like the questioning during trial. First, you'll have opening statements by the prosecution, and then you'll have opening statements by the defense. The prosecution always presents its case first in criminal court because it's their case. Then you'll have direct examination. Then you've got cross-examination. Direct examination will be the prosecutor calling their witness, and then cross-examination would be the defense cross-examining them. Then you'd have, in some cases, you'd have a redirect, and a redirect would be if something is said during cross-examination that the prosecutor thinks they need to defend, then there'd be a redirect for more questioning to be answered. And the same thing with a cross examination or recross. There's closing arguments, and there's then after closing arguments by both sides, you've got jury instructions, and the jury deliberates. Then you've got a verdict. Sentencing does not occur. You don't get a verdict, and then the judge sentences the defendant. It occurs later, and it's decided by the judge. So I think we've touched really quick on a lot of these things, but it's a really interesting chapter. So read the chapter, look over your PowerPoints and the material provided, and I think you'll be fine. If you have any questions, as always, call me anytime. Thank you.